she brings in his head on a silver tray. That's from the musical version of Sunset Boulevard, starring Glenn Close.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's Opera Box Score. I'm your host, George Cederquist, joined on America's Talk radio show about opera by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, and Ashlee Hardgrave. All right, this week, Oliver goes inside the huddle with pianist Chris Reynolds, who reveals how he plans to be a change agent within the gay white male opera mafia. Plus, for podcast listeners only, Chris tells the story behind his custom body ink. And then Monday Evening Quarterback returns when we review an animated version of the Magic Flute featuring a particularly forceful Tamino. Plus 2-minute drill. Hey, y'all, let's commit to producing a full ring cycle in the middle of the pandemic.
Huddle up. Let's go inside the huddle.
So earlier today, I had a conversation with Chris Reynolds, who is the current pianist in the ensemble of the Ryan Opera Center here at Lyric Opera of Chicago. I literally just met him today. As is wont to happen with me, you can probably find the exact moment in our interview where I begin to fall in love with him. He is such a smart guy, really passionate about what he's doing as a musician, but also understanding his privilege and how he is going to be in a position at some point in his career to maybe affect some of the changes that we hope for in the opera world in terms of who has power and who are the gatekeepers. So I'm cheering him on. He's a very flamboyant musician in the best possible way. And we'll start the interview with him talking about how he made the transition away from being a solo pianist towards what we call collaborative piano while he was at Juilliard, and his road to becoming one of the ensemble members of the Ryan Opera Center. But before we do, here is his solo piano transcription of the Dance of the Seven Veils from Richard Strauss's Salome.
All I will say is that there is between the solo pianists and the collaborative pianist a sort of like sharks and jets thing where, you know, the solo pianists sort of look at the collaborative pianist as like, oh, they sold out. The collaborative pianists look at the solo pianist as, oh, they're delusional. Juilliard produces a very sort of weird dynamic between the two degrees. And as someone who has done both degrees, at a certain point, I was, you know, very kind of whiplashed about what was the path I was supposed to be going down. And young artist programs, I had at a certain point developed in my head this idea that they were sort of the place where pianists go if pianists don't ever want to perform again. They would stick you in basement level C and you would become like a living, breathing MIDI file for singers to just, you know, sing.
Repetiteur, yeah.
Yeah. So I was like, oh God, no, that's not for me. But then the realism of having spent 8 years at Juilliard and I'd run out of degree programs, so I had to, you know, man up and enter the real world came about. I was like, well, you know, what do I actually want to do? And the answer was, I don't know. And the answer is still kind of, you know, who knows, especially now with the pandemic. But I'd realized that, you know, talking to my teachers, they'd all say, well, you know, artist programs, they're not just if you want to spend the rest of your life in an opera house. They are easily the best way of just meeting all the best singers of your age and of your generation, and they're, regardless of what your ultimate career is, the best jumping off point to just learning how to operate in the real world under a much more carefully curated and controlled environment than you would get just, freelancing in New York City. And the Ryan Center was essentially the program that I had my eye on, mainly because of Craig Terry, because I had worked with Craig for 4 summers leading up to that in Germany. And I really, really liked Craig. I liked his humor, his sense of musical partnership. He would always come to this festival to do the cabaret night. It was always really fun music. And I knew he was in charge of the Ryan Center, and I knew that he was a actively performing pianist. And so I figured correctly that this would be a place where I could go and have my interests considered not just as, a rep, but as a pianist, where I would actually get to be able to perform. I would have someone there encouraging me to perform. And I was right, ultimately, which is great, because really all I've done, ironically, despite the pandemic, since being at the Ryan Center is, record a new recital every 2 weeks. So here I am a year and a half later at, this amazing program, but I would not have guessed it.
I mean, for me, I think of pianists and, scholars and coaches like Graham Johnson and Roger Vignoles and Irwin Gage and Jeffrey Parsons as like giants in the music world, but obviously they're people that we think of as collaborative pianists and not as solo pianists. Do you still have your eyes set on perhaps having a separate solo piano career?
Oh, no. Oh.
No? Okay.
Solo piano versus club, the main difference, and it's sort of sad that you only realize this too late, there is a value placed on age. Like with solo piano, if you're not 18 winning the Van Cliburn, doing these things, you've kind of aged out of that opportune window of, getting there. Whereas with collaborative piano, it's kind of the opposite. It's like when I started auditioning for, collaborative piano stuff at like Aspen, I was probably like 19, and everyone was like, "Oh, you're too young. No, we can't trust you. No, no." So it's very much the sort of the opposite dynamic of age valuing. And solo piano, I know I'm already kind of approaching that upper limit of prime age to enter the industry. And not gonna lie, it's like those first 4 years at Juilliard alone in a practice room, 8 hours a day, practicing, etudes, is not the tea. Not. I've realized that, there's such a sort of, the two things appeal to very different parts of my personality. And I've realized in the ultimate sort of long run that being able to constantly make music with other people is much more what makes me happy. I have friends who love the being alone for 8 hours a day in a practice room, and I love that for them, but it's just not, ultimately not really my thing. And I still love playing solo music. I love practicing it. I love performing whatever I can. My last WFMT recital was all solo piano music, but career-wise, it's definitely not something that I've ever really been drawn back to commit to.
Before we, because of the pandemic, I haven't actually had a chance to hear you as part of the ensemble in person yet. But I get a sense about you from the available media that there is, that you are highly individualistic and that you, your presence is known, for better or for worse. Like, it's hard to not notice you as the person sitting at the keys, and that's not always a desirable quality. But I feel like now that we are in this time of things needing to be visually interesting.
Mhm.
Maybe that is actually important right now.
Mhm.
We were going to talk about this story about a pianist that has influenced you, and I don't want to, tip my hat too much, but can you go ahead and let's talk about this person and formative experience?
Yes, well, I grew up in the great Saratoga Springs, New York, which is, as some people might know, the summer home of the Philadelphia Orchestra, my childhood orchestra. And every summer I would go to SPAC to see the orchestra, and one of the season regulars back then was Jeanine Thibode, a great French pianist. And somehow all those summers I would always get backstage as a kid to meet him, because I think my mom knew whoever was in charge of, the VIP backstage access. And Thibode was incredibly, I think I was sort of expecting, he would sign my program and then say, go away. But no, he was incredibly nice, and every single time would talk to us 20 minutes, show me pictures of his Ferraris.
Ferraris?
Oh, yeah.
I thought he just collected ascots. I didn't know he collected cars.
And one of the things that really struck me about him being, a young gay kid, ask any gay person, obviously, the question of when did you know you were gay? It's I don't know. I think at the time I didn't know I was gay, but the seeds were germinating in my mind. And I sort of sensed something about him on stage. He would wear these beautiful, custom Vivienne Westwood suits with these shiny patterns on the shoulders, and he would wear these amazing shoes, and his hair was, sort of boy band-esque contour, and I loved that because I sort of was used to pianists showing up in the coattails in a corpse, just kind of Rachmaninoff, and then
yeah.
So it was something very kind of eye-opening to me about that. Wow, that's ooh, cool. Because I was sort of only used to women, Sarah Chang showing up in her beautiful dress, looking fabulous.
Mm-hmm.
I asked him about it once. I was are you allowed to do that? To show up? And he's I realized at a certain point that for men on stage, they're just so much more limited about how they can choose to express themselves with what they wear.
Mm-hmm.
And at a certain point, he just decided to, wear whatever he wanted. And over the years, that idea has sort of stuck with me and changed with me. And especially the older I've gotten and the more I've sort of come to terms with society and the ideas of heteronormativity. And I've realized that, performing is really hard, and it's really hard emotionally, it's hard physically, and it's very difficult to sort of be on stage being as open and vulnerable as you want to be musically if you feel boxed in physically by what you're wearing. Because to me, what I wear is very much an expression of who I am. I'm very in agreement with that RuPaul phrase, we're all born naked and the rest is drag. Everything we do is kind of gender is a performance. How I present myself at the grocery store is a performance. I present myself in front of donors is a performance. Everything I put on my body is in some way me showing to the world how I want to be seen. And I realized that me going on stage in a tux, it's not me. That will never be me. That will never be how I want to present myself to the world. And I felt, it's hard to sort of explain, but I felt sort of musically boxed in every time I would show up on stage in a tuxedo, because it just felt like I wasn't being authentic to myself. And how could I then be authentic musically? So at Juilliard, I just started experimenting much more with what could I wear on stage before my teacher would say, and it started becoming that I would start doing, wardrobe changes at halftime, and I would, experiment with bizarre looking blouses and cool shoes. I've tried several times wearing heels on stage. The problem is that I'm too tall and the heels raise my legs so much that I can't actually fit underneath. So that's canceled. I can't do that anymore.
How tall are you? Because we can't tell on Zoom.
6'1".
Oh, wow. Okay.
But yeah, Thibode definitely was sort of that catalyst of like, you know, at the time I didn't really realize what it meant to be openly gay, openly queer as an artist performing for, you know, a culture that is funded primarily by very kind of heteronormative.
That's actually the point. So,
Sure.
In a way, I feel like we're talking about like the news, like how we expect our journalists to be impartial. But we know that everybody is human and they have their opinions. And we know that, like, when we're watching Rachel Maddow, we're who's kidding? We know we're watching Rachel Maddow, you know? But when we're watching like CNN, like, we also know we're sort of watching something that's left leaning, you know?
Yeah.
And I'd rather just be transparent. Like, what is this person's aesthetic? What is this person's point of view? Rather than pretend that they don't have one, you know?
It's, you know, I won't name names, but I was told something that really, I don't want to say hurt me, but it made me angry in a very inspiring way. It inspired me through anger by a teacher I had at Juilliard once, academic teacher, where we had an assignment where we had to public speak a sort of autobiography. And my autobiography, you know, mentioned I was gay and mentioned proud I am of that fact. And this teacher said, you know, I don't think you should mention that. I think it's gonna maybe cause some people to not hire you. So just don't. And that really got me thinking. I was like, you know, why would I want to be hired or liked by someone who would hate me because I'm gay in the first place?
Yeah.
I would rather just be open about it from day one. And then if they don't want to hire me, then I would not want to work for them if they don't want to hire me because I'm gay. So it's something I've realized that it's like, I would always much rather be, you know, open, wearing, you know, bejazzled Vivienne Westwood suits and have, you know, some people say, oh, I don't want to see him again, than pretend, you know, that I'm this coattail wearing straight dude.
Well, I just want to say that it's not a criticism of you, but it is a privilege of your generation to be able to be that way.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So we were talking about this conservative art form. Have you had pushback from your employers up till now? You don't have to talk about which ones. I'm just curious to see, like, you know, if you're testing boundaries, you know?
Classical music is so weird because it is in this place right now where it's trying to appeal to the millennial kind of Gen Z audience, which they know is much more left-leaning, is much more concerned with social justice and these sort of things. Yet it's, you know, it's donor base, whatever the opposite of that is. And I think institutions are at a very tricky point where they have to be walking this line, at least so they think, of appealing to both of those crowds, the crowd that they want the money from and the crowd that they want the Instagram posts from. And I've found on several of jobs I've had that, you know, they want me to be sharing stories on Instagram. They want me to be doing cool programming. They want me to do all of the left-leaning millennial woke stuff. But also they're like, oh, but don't be political because, you know, we're a nonprofit and we're, you know, we have conservative donors and we don't want them to, you know, to be scandalized by you mentioning Black Lives Matter, you know, these sort of things. So it's we like, I have yet to work for an employer who is just a full, like, oh, if you know, show up and have a lisp, you're fired. But I also have yet to work for an employer who has relinquished this desire to never burn any bridges with a conservative donor that may or may not withdraw their support because some young millennial, sub-employee commented something on Instagram.
Yeah, the Devo department is like at your performances, like holding their breath, like, oh.
Yeah, exactly. So,
so you are, since you're talking about being gay and you present as a white cis male, we talked about this before we started this interview about how your particular demographic seems to be in a position in the opera community that's actually a powerful position traditionally, which is funny because, being a gay person in most other arenas might be a disadvantage, but
it's I, without realizing it, lucked out to like the one industry in the world where I am like the like apex, like I have the most privilege of anyone. Yeah, it's really strange and it's kind of sad. But there is something I've realized that, the entirety of the opera world is run by what I've heard referred to as the gay mafia, which, I mean, I cannot say if there is a, international conglomerate of opera CEOs meeting on, Fire Island every year and
Mykonos, come on, we have
Yes.
better taste on that. Yeah.
But I started to realize this at a certain point, and it started to make sense because, as we've talked about, there is definitely this weird thing where classical music doesn't want flamboyantly gay people, but also like there's so many gay people in classical music. And there is absolutely, whether or not anyone wants to talk about it openly, this idea that the positions in music, whether it's, conductors, coaches, directors, anyone who is the sort of the gatekeeper of knowledge and power in music sort of has to be white. Because white people are very uncomfortable with non-white people becoming those gatekeepers of this Western art form. I mean, to the point that my first teacher at Juilliard was Korean, and my middle name is Kenji, which is Japanese, because my mom is Japanese. And I told him, I was like, I kind of want to add Kenji to my sort of official stage name. And he said, as a Korean, he was like, don't do that. People won't take you seriously if they know you're Asian. And it was like, wow, that's sad. And over the years, I've realized, no, he's absolutely right that the classical music world is so obsessed with centering whiteness and centering sort of straightness as the sort of gatekeeping power hold that they're very unwilling to sort of let anyone else be in power, which is also why, despite the fact that the gay mafia is the gay mafia is also rather straight presenting, which was another comment I got from a eminent British accompanist who I had a very strange conversation once with, who was like, it's like, oh, well, we're both very privileged because we're gay, but people think we're straight. So, it's so weird. It's all very weird. And I've realized this, that, the gay mafia makes it very easy for people like me to rise and to get hired, because it's kind of like the reverse of somewhere like Fox News, where, they might hire these attractive female anchors because the people in power are these, kind of slobbery.
We call them sweaty old white guys.
Guys who want the attractive women.
Yeah. With lots of legs and lots of hair.
Sort of became sort of the opposite in a lot of the opera world, I think, where it's that the gay mafia wants the sort of good-looking other gay guys to be the other ones in their circle, which is it's kind of a shame because there's so many amazing people who do exactly what I do who are not gay white dudes.
Like Carrie Ann Matheson.
That's exactly. I mean, in my class at Juilliard, the collaborative piano class, there was me and one other gay white dude. And then a lot of women. I mean, collaborative piano is actually a lot of women.
Mm.
And all of the women in my class are absolutely overqualified to be in a lot of these positions. And they are going to have to fight 10 times harder to be taken seriously as, again, the gatekeepers of music, whatever that is. And that's a shame to me.
Okay, so I'm very grateful that you're on this show saying these things, because this is something I've said before on this platform and on another platform, that there are a finite number of gay white men, probably, in the tens or even less, who are in positions of power at young artist programs, opera companies, and even universities, conservatories, who, dub certain artists as being right for opera, and they make all the decisions. Yeah. And that may be a reason why the American artist, as technically proficient as they are, they're sort of homogenous in terms of what they have to offer.
Yeah.
You would agree with that?
Yeah. I think it's a strange thing where, to me, queerness as an umbrella term is all about being, expressing exactly who you are on the inside, on the outside. And like, what better way is there to do that than music? Because music is literally just like very audible expression of who you are on the inside. And it's strange to me that so many of the, these queer people in power value a kind of heteronormativity in the actual music making. Because to me, that's kind of goes against the joy of being a gay person, that because, when you're gay, you don't really automatically fit in with the kind of heteronormative box of society, which to me makes it much more, I think, easy and comfortable to go on stage and just kind of be myself and make the music that I want to make.
But because they're working within a patriarchal structure, they think maybe this is how you can be gay and, fit. And they don't realize, hey, we all are here. It's like, uprising, like the slaves uprising. I'm sorry to use that term, like we could actually do this if we all agreed,
Like it's, I think it all just goes back to that donor problem of like, I don't know. I do not know what would happen if a company just started doing exactly what they wanted to do, regardless of what their donors did. I have no idea what would happen. I don't know if the donors would all revolt. I don't know if the donors would not even notice because they're never on social media. I don't know. I don't know what would happen. But I think it's going to be a long time before we do know what would happen, because I don't imagine companies doing anything like that for a while, which is a shame because there's going to be a point where the donors are all going to die off. They're left with millennials who don't care because the companies never bothered to actually be open about these things. And
well, well, on a good note, what are you working on right now with Lyric or independently that you would like to talk about before we run out of time over here?
Well, at Lyric, we have the gala coming up, which we just filmed. What's one of the beauties of the pandemic is we pre-film every performance, which at first I was like, oh, we're going to lose the magic of live audiences. But at the end of the day, what it ended up meaning is that everything perfect takes.
So that gala is called Magical Music Around the World. It premieres on March 21st. It's directed by Craig Terry and features the singers of the Ryan Opera Center and pianist Chris Reynolds. And we do have a playlist, and you should definitely go to the podcast version of this, which comes out tomorrow, Thursday, March 4th, and listen to our conversation that we have on the podcast only about Judy Garland and Maria Callas, the two names that are tattooed on his forearms. And in our show notes there, you'll find a link to the playlist for the excerpts that we listened to.
Pass or fail? Here's Monday evening quarterback
Monday evening quarterback. It's been a while. Matt Cummings is going to set it up for us.
We're coming back in style. If there were ever a time to resurrect Monday evening quarterback, it is for this staple of the Cummings family household in my childhood, which is the Magic Flute, but make it Thundercats. This was an animated Saturday morning cartoons adaptation of the Magic Flute that I used to rent from Blockbuster on VHS all the time, that has like a bizarrely all-star cast of voice actors, including Mark Hamill, the Luke Skywalker as Prince Tamino, in a semi-reunion with Star Wars' half-sister Jolie Fisher as Pamina, noted Shakespearean actress and Oscar nominee Samantha Eggar as the Queen of the Night, and Michael York from Cabaret, Austin Powers, and others as Sarastro. Just utterly bananas.
It's so great. Now, if you're not familiar with where this comes from, so there were a series of Saturday morning cartoons that came on. They were called the ABC Weekend Special, and they were on. They started in like the late 70s, and they went, for 20 years into like the mid 90s. So this was a two-parter. It went over 2 different Saturdays in
with a cliffhanger.
With a cliffhanger, and then a previously on section at the beginning of part 2. And this all happened in April and May of 1994 during season 16 of ABC's Weekend Special.
But so they take the Magic Flute and adapt it liberally. The three ladies become 3 fairies, one of whom is 2,000 years older than the other 2.
I was telling the gentleman before we started that I was taking stream of consciousness notes as I was watching this film, and I basically just put for the 3 lady fairies, why are 2 dressed like hooker elves at a Ren fair and one is dressed like Mrs. Garrett from The Facts of Life? Incredibly
accurate. Just like, I promise you, so accurate. Papageno is a literal bird man. But what is my...
Chester's fried chicken bird man. Yeah, he's a rooster.
And the whole thing is like 43 minutes long plus commercials, right?
But in those 43 minutes, they find time to work quite a few motifs from the Magic Flute into midified musical numbers.
Yeah,
the best one being the Queen of the Night aria, which is transposed down 2 octaves and starts with the Queen of the Night singing the original melody, and then at the high note part, they switch, and the MIDI flutes play the high notes, and she sings like the bass. She sings like the cello line.
It's like Queen of the Contralto Night. It's amazing.
There's also a Dies Bildnis duet where they fall in love on the bed. There is at least one very obvious Star Wars reference where Mark Hamill's character takes off his cape with Jolie Fisher and swings over the stormtroopers using a chandelier. Just hijinks galore.
But what is the text right there? It's super gross. It has weird sexual overtones. So Tamino is holding on to Pamina. He flings his cape over and grabs the chandelier to get them out of there. And he looks at her and goes, "I've always wanted to do this." And then she goes, "Me too." I was like, what is happening? This is horrifying.
There are multiple action sequences. Also in this version, Pamina is secretly Sarastro's daughter and not the Queen of the Nights, which frankly makes more sense than in the real opera. It
kind of does, actually. I was like, I don't remember this, and then I was like, oh, because it's not part of the opera, but it's kind of a better take.
Those folks at ABC improved on Chickinator. It's fantastic. The singing style, too, is straight, MT belt, is it not really?
It's it's not even MT. We're talking about pop tracks with MIDI backgrounds.
Yeah, it's as if the golden age listened to a lot of late 80s, early 90s top 40. That's what it sounds like.
Like a Celine Dion demo track.
Yes, there we go. That's good. I also love that they during the aforementioned Dies Bildnis love duet, where they somehow rhyme. Pamina sings "My Hero" and rhymes it with Tamino, and I was like, "This is great." Mazel for everybody.
Close enough.
Wonderful.
I watched it. I watched it with the family on a little evening family TV, and so I have a 3rd grader and a 5th grader. The 5th grader, I said, "So what do you think?" And he says, "This is so uncanon."
That's actually a great word.
He's got discerning taste.
Very, very, very disturbing. There's also a bizarre scene in which Tamino is in some sort of an inn and there's people drinking and the Queen of the Night shows up and he says, wait a second, the Queen of the Night doesn't meet Tamino in a bar?
Yep.
My third grader, when I asked her how she thought it was going to end, she was like, we all know it's going to end with true love's kiss. 1, duh. 2, yuck.
Little
She
did
said
she
true
know.
love's kiss?
Little did she know that it was going to be not the true love's kiss you were expecting. Stay tuned.
It's that's very, very true. Well, the link...
Is it a Papageno Tamino kiss? I
Oliver,
didn't see
you're
it.
spoiling the opera for everyone.
Listen, first of all, it's, are there some weirdly overt sexual overtones? Yes. Is there someone who is obviously a homosexual, even though they don't actually say it? Absolutely. I mean...
And it's not even Michael York this time.
No, it's not Michael York. It's freaking Monostatos. Like I said, Monostatos is straight and after Pamina in the same way that Jafar was after Princess Jasmine in Aladdin. Like, I don't buy it. I don't buy it.
Well, you can stream it for free. We have a link on our website, operaboxscore.com. It'll take you back to 1994. Here's our call to action. Take a look, watch it, let us know what you think. Write into us, operaboxscore@gmail.com. And if you do, I'm going to send you one of our bespoke Opera Box Score beer mats so that you too can have a drink just like the Queen of the Night and Tamino in that bar. 2-minute drill coming up now.
This just in, the 2-minute drill.
All right, listen up. Here's everything you need to know about what happened in Opera Land this week.
The Metropolitan Opera Orchestra has found a new ally in its union negotiation fight. The Wagner Society of New York presented the Anton Zeidel Award to the group en masse with a $5,000 donation to help the unemployed performers.
Both the Vienna and Munich Philharmonics have also expressed solidarity with the Met musicians. The world is watching, reads the Vienna Phil's statement. The Met's global reputation and the cultural landscape of New York City would be devastated by the loss of artists of this caliber. The orchestra hosts some of the best players in the world.
Meanwhile, Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts has announced an initiative to create 10 outdoor performance and rehearsal spaces in New York City. The project, titled Restart Stages, hopes to revitalize the performing arts in the New York cultural scene following the devastation of the pandemic.
The Vienna State Opera has shifted its focus from arias to paintings, welcoming visitors on free guided tours while Austrian theaters remain closed due to the pandemic. The opera collected nearly 4,500 euros in donations during the first weekend of guided visits. A Staatsoper representative said, quote, "The important thing is that people remember the opera and say, I want to go back for a performance."
American composer and mezzo-soprano Lisa Nair will launch the One Voice Micro Opera Festival. The project includes contributions from Margaret O'Connell, Hugo Vera, Audrey Yoder, and friend of the show, Zach Finkelstein. Traditional opera will likely be one of the last performance forms that will be safe to return to because of the performing forces and the super spreader nature of singing, said Nair. While I couldn't fix the cancelled gigs or the income loss all on my own, I did realize we could work together to channel their talents and connect them with audiences.
While some may turn to micro-festivals, the English National Opera is trying a macro approach to staging pandemic productions. The company plans to stage all 4 operas of the Ring cycle over 5 years, rehearsing with its cast in COVID-safe bubbles before opening with Die Walküre in the fall.
Writing for The Observer, friend of the show Harry Rose has reviewed Sonia Yoncheva's Metropolitan Opera Stars in Concert recital and found both the performance and repertoire less than ideal. He writes, "It's an unflattering and unfair truth that the repercussions for thwarting the Met's star-making algorithm ultimately reflect infinitely more on the singer than the institution. There is still time for Yoncheva to emerge from it unscathed or even bolstered."
According to middleclassartist.com, Brigham Young University has figured out how to make singing in a chorus safe. The choral conducting and ensembles division did their homework and concluded that live rehearsals, with proper safeguards, could be conducted with acceptable risk. According to the program directors, no known cases of COVID-19 have been traced back to the exposure in music ensembles.
Tulsa Opera will commemorate the centennial of the Tulsa Race Massacre with Greenwood Overcomes. The showcase will feature works by over a dozen black composers and will include no less than 4 world premieres performed by multiple black artists, including Leona Mitchell, Denise Graves, Noah Stewart, and pianist Howard Watkins. The 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre gouged an ugly and enduring scar into the heart of Tulsa, Oklahoma, and America, said artistic director Tobias Picker. Greenwood Overcomes will be performed for a limited live audience on May 1st.
A Washington high school has found an inventive and a little bit hilarious way for its students to make music in pandemic times. Wenatchee High School in Washington State has provided its students with individual pop-up tents for band rehearsals. Each student is zipped into their own pop-up tent with their instrument 6 feet from other band members. We here at OBS fully endorse this method as a way for opera to return, because who doesn't want to see Vittorio Grigolo in a tiny tent?
Tent. It was a busy weekend for friend of the show, Kaman Marat, after starring with Angela Brown in Opera from a Sister's Point of View for Florida Grand Opera. Marat was the second place winner of the Rochester Oratorio Society's International Vocal Competition. The winners of the 2020 and 2021 competitions will appear in a showcase together May 1st. They include another friend of the show, mezzo-soprano Cara Dugan. Yeah, that's the old OBS bump for ya. Right, James Dara? And now, yellow cards this week.
USA. Boston University's Tanglewood Institute will go on virtually. BUTI from Anywhere 2021 will continue to train young instrumentalists, singers, and composers online.
Also USA. Utah Opera and Utah Symphony plan to resume live performances on March 25th. All concerts will be shortened and include social distancing, face coverings, fewer musicians, and less frequent performances.
That's 3 cards for the USA. The Glimmerglass Festival will return this summer, but will be held outdoors on the lawns of the festival grounds. This week's red cards.
Germany. Komische Oper Berlin has canceled all performances until May 1st.
France. Opéra Nationale de Paris has cancelled all performances up until April 5th, including the Aida slated for Opera Bastille. No triumphal march for this one.
USA! Cincinnati Opera is moving to Plan B, canceling its indoor operas for the rest of 21. The company plans to continue with the season in some capacity, so look forward to that in the yellow card section in late March.
Exit stage right. Voice teacher and soprano Florence Birdwell has died at the age of 96. Birdwell taught aspiring opera and musical theater singers at Oklahoma City University from 1946 to 2013, including such now famous performers as Kelly O'Hara and Kristen Chenoweth.
Mexican soprano Violeta Dávalos Lara has died at the age of 52. After her debut in 1990 at the age of 19, Lara went on to perform major operas and many zarzuelas, including in the world premieres of Ambrosio by José Antonio Guzmán, Alicia y Brindis por un Milenio by Federico Ibarra, and Hildegonda by Melesio Morales.
American bass baritone Antoine Hodge has died of COVID-19 at the age of only 38. Hodge had sung as a chorister and soloist at the Met and 14 other companies across the U.S.
American soprano Chelsea Miller has died of cancer. An up-and-coming singer, Miller was a 2014 regional finalist of the Metropolitan Opera National Council auditions and sang a number of opera companies across the United States, especially Opera Memphis.
And on this day, March 1st, it was the premiere in 1620 of Monteverdi's Andromeda in Mantua for the carnival season, and that opera is now lost. In 1743, it was the first performance of Handel's oratorio Samson in London. In 1851, Saverio Mercadante's Medea premiered in Naples at the Teatro San Carlo. In 1910, it was the first performance of Debussy's L'Enfant Prodigue in Covent Garden. In 1919, the Vienna State Opera went on strike, protesting the hiring of Richard Strauss, saying he was paid too much and would produce only his own material. You should be so lucky. In 1927, it was the birth of soprano Lucine Amara in Connecticut. In 1950, John Carlo Menotti's opera The Consul premiered at the Schubert Theater, and it went on to win the Pulitzer Prize for Music. In 1954, it was the birth of American mezzo-soprano Lorraine Hunt Lieberson, my goddess. In 1959, birth of American composer Laura Karpman. In 1962, it was the birth of Russian soprano Galina Gorchakova. And Italian composer Ildebrando Pizzetti had 2 operas premiering on this day, Assassino nella Cattedrale in 1958 and Clitemnestra in 1965. Both operas opened at La Scala.
And that's your 2-minute drill. The exit stage right column sadly long this week on the show.
Yeah. And I wanted to just take a moment to talk to some of the sort of younger singer folk out in the world about Antoine and Chelsea and losing them both in the same week. I had a lot of friends that sang with one or both of them. And I'm pretty sure each one of us is at least, no more than 1 degree away from one or both of these folks. And there's a sadness when we lose like a singing legend that is older and has lived a really long and full life. But there's, at least for me, there's like an extra heartache when you lose these wonderful humans when they're really young and full of potential, and you lose these wonderful humans. You also think about the music they didn't get to make. Antoine was last at the Met in their Porgy during the 1920 season. So for all of you that are mourning Antoine and Chelsea, my heart's with you.
And it sounds like the Met is going to dedicate an upcoming performance of Porgy to Antoine. Speaking of the Met, Matt Cummings, apparently we found a solution to fix the orchestra's problems.
Well, yeah. I mean, they got that $5,000 grant, which is whatever, but the real solution is more open letters, people. Keep writing them. Keep posting them. The more open letters, the better. The NFL, Munich, you totally know what arts administration is like in the United States. Speak your truth, guys. I mean, solidarity is better than nothing, but it's only by that much.
Yeah. Ashlee Hardgrave, Lincoln Center, are they causing more problems or are they finding solutions?
No, they're doing great things. They're doing this Restart program, which is going to open up all of these different outdoor venues across New York City. And they're getting a little help from a Greek shipping heir. The Stavros Niarchos Foundation is the big...
You say George Soros?
If only. No, so Stavros Niarchos is like a gazillionaire Greek shipping heir, who is also known in some circles because his son at one point was engaged to Paris Hilton. At any rate, he's the one that's helping fund this whole like open stages thing that's happening across New York City in April. And it's really cool because they're doing a bunch of multicultural organizations as partners with this. So there's going to be a cabaret stage. I think it's going to be on like the Hearst platform, whatever that's called. So it's really going to be a nice way to just kickstart however we can an outdoor cultural scene. And Manhattan in April is the weather's decent, so it's one more ray of hope. And if we can just keep getting those rays, I'll be very happy.
Maybe we should just get a huge like shipping boat and put it in the East River and just divide it up into different stages.
Stavros has those. I bet we could borrow one.
That would be cool.
Opera on the barge.
Opera on the
barge. We could do Il Tabarro.
There we go.
Il Tabarro.
Billy
right?
Budd would be part of that season, probably. The Ring Cycle comes to English National Opera as a co-production with the Met as well. I am scratching my head about this. First of all, let me say, Richard Jones, who is at the head of this production, one of my all-time favorite directors, probably not shared by the panel, maybe I'm wrong, would die to see anything that man directs. Over at ENO, Annalise Miskimen, who's the artistic director, been there a year or two, possibly 3 years, she basically said, it's now or never in terms of programming this piece, and went on to say, look, the argument is that in times of great change, art has always been there for us. We take risks. We do big things. This certainly seems like a big risk, and I'm trying to figure out if it's foolhardy or not.
I mean, I certainly hope it's not another Lepage ring that is much heralded and not much beloved.
I mean, points for boldness, though.
Yeah.
Points for giving people something to look forward to. I lean towards foolhardy, but I wonder if that's just my cynical, negative gut reaction. But we'll see.
Well, I think you have to look at the timeline on this as well, right? Like, you don't just decide to do the Ring Cycle on a Monday in March. Clearly, They would have had to have made this decision when Miss Kimmon came to the helm of ENO, was talking to the Met. So this is in the before times we're talking about. So the real decision was like, are we going to pull the plug on this, or are we going to double down, and are we going to go ahead and do it?
But we're not talking about the Lepage production. And what did we lose financially to have that production? And do gimmicks ever work? Has there ever been a gimmick like the machine that has worked in opera, that has made the opera better, and that has changed people's idea about an opera? I feel like the fan base for The Ring is,
very
dedicated,
specific.
yeah, and they're dedicated enough to see a production no matter what. And I feel like The Machine was an effort to make The Ring more accessible and to get new audiences to come see it because of The Machine. But did they? They never really got it to work that well. And I remember it was dangerous when they first started it. People were like falling off it.
It certainly was never able to do anything like the publicity.
The Robert Lepage production taught us what we already know now in this pandemic, is that the art is only as good as the technology which presents it, right?
Get the Sharpie, George. Get the Sharpie. Make your point.
There we go. Gonna get the Sharpie out. The art is only as good as the technology that presents it, right? We're doing shows, live streaming, digital films, right? But if the tech sucks, we cannot get to the heart of the story, to the narrative, to that personal connection. That was the problem with the Robert Lepage Ring. Richard Jones will not make that same mistake. If you've seen his work, he will not make that same mistake. And I don't think E&O is going to let him make that same mistake. And frankly, I don't think the Met is going to make him make that same mistake as well. We are at the beginning of a 5-year journey here on this production. Very excited to see, if this ends in tears or not. Looking at, on this day, I was surprised to see that, 3 of those pieces, 2 of which I've directed and 1 of which I have a connection to, right?
Drink more than once.
Everyone's directed the console. That's no big deal. Debussy's L'Enfant Prodigue, which is it's an oratorio, really totally nutty piece. And Mercadante, I just did a selection from I Due Figaro by Mercadante. That old chestnut.
Good call. Bad call. On Opera Box Score.
We're going to wrap the show up. Oliver Camacho.
Josh O'Connor in a tuxedo, which is my new
kryptonite,
sexual orientation. He looked so good, and it was such a weird show last night. There were lots of bumpy moments, and Daniel Kaluuya was on mute for his acceptance speech, and it was embarrassing. And Catherine O'Hara, who I love, she was trying to do a bit. I think she was trying to do a bit.
You're saying that people in the TV industry screwed it up on Zoom?
Yeah.
It's the Golden Globes though, so
the Emmys were much smoother from last year. But anyway,
they had to live up to their wild card reputation somehow.
Well, I mean, yeah, that's the thing. The Golden Globes are always the mulligan anyway, because they're run by the HFPA.
It's usually just a big drink and dinner party.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing that dawned on me as I was looking at some of the highlights and looking at the broadcast, is that I forgot how. First of all, the Golden Globes is my favorite of the award shows because I love drunk celebrities who are uninhibited. But it dawned on me that 2.5 hours of that 3.5 hour broadcast is them doing filler with celebrities that are talking to each other that are in the same room. So it was boring AF because you didn't have those little moments of candor. So,
Ashlee, is this also your good call?
It's my good call. I also have a bad one. We'll get to that.
Go ahead. Take the floor.
Oh lordy. So in this closing of Black History Month, we've had a lot of folks that have really done right by the community and to help raise awareness of the community and the art in that community. Oberlin is, at least this week, not one of those folks. It's been talked about in a lot of singer circles and musician circles. You're probably going to be sick of hearing about it by the time the show drops, but there was a concert poster that was released for Oberlin's celebration of Black artistry, and there were 5 headshots on the poster. Guess how many of those artists were Black? Guess how many of those artists were white? I understand that there are good intentions, but the optics of this is really, really poor, and I shuddered when I saw it, and I'm a little embarrassed, and I hope these things don't keep happening, because it seems like it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back.
Well, it's just in their defense, they are a pretty diverse student body, and they
That's
did
what makes
do
this even weirder.
Yeah, and they did a series of Black History Month concerts, and I think this was like the last one, and they just didn't have anybody to just take a look at that flyer, or that it was like clearly a digital announcement to say something's off about this. They could have put the images of the composers they were featuring: William Grant Still, the Chevalier Joseph the Chevalier de Saint Georges, Joseph Boulogne, and somebody else, I forget who was in that concert.
Jeffrey Mumford.
They should have put images of those people instead of the 5 very white artists. They're not even good pictures of these artists. So
it's like Crackerfest 2021, and I know these guys are great, but like just list the names if that's the case. The optics of it, like it's just a bad choice.
Matt Cummings.
We will close on a high note after that, which is a follow-up to a story that we talked about earlier this fall about the National Negro Opera House in my hometown of Pittsburgh, which was named a landmark back in September, but is pretty run down and needs a good bit of investment to keep it from being demolished. But there is a write-up in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that we will share on our website of the woman, Jeanette Solomon, who bought the mansion where the company took place and is not saying die. She started a GoFundMe or a different kind of fundraiser in order to make up the money to restore the house to its glory and just make sure that this history is commemorated, celebrated, and known to everyone in Pittsburgh. And we applaud her for it.
That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk radio show about opera. Our announcer is Norm Woodel. He's at normwoodel.com. On Facebook, search for Opera Box Score. On Twitter and Instagram, we're at Opera Box Score. Help us deepen the bench of listeners by liking and sharing our social media posts. Email us at operaboxscore@gmail.com. Get yourself a coaster. Subscribe to our podcast on Stitcher, or just favorite our show on Apple Podcasts. The views and opinions expressed on Opera Box Score are solely those of the show's creative team. Any rebroadcast, reproduction, or other use of the accounts of this show without the express written consent of Opera Box Score is illegal, is what I would be saying if we didn't want the engagement. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For our guest, Chris Reynolds, and your co-hosts, Matt Cummings and Ashlee Hardgrave, I'm George Cederquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera with an all-white roster of panelists. We're back with an all-new show next week when we go inside the huddle with the star of Tapestry Opera's Song d'Hiver, soprano Mireille Asselin. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and the return of Weston Williams. Join us.